far. So before I jump into CX, I wanted to share this question that we in the ecom team, and maybe a lot of us here this afternoon, have been asking ourselves, especially during this pandemic. With the opportunity and focus on e-commerce during this pandemic, we needed to really ask ourselves, so how do we create and maintain the ideal customer experiences for our online stores? So how do we create these good customer experiences in the online world without the elements that we are used to in the offline world? And most importantly, which is what I'm going to be focusing on this afternoon, how do we actually put good customer experience into practice and not just keep it as some concept or theory that we wanna understand? So that's what I'll be talking about today. So as an overview, I'll be talking about three major points. I'll start off with the why. So why CX? Then I'll quickly define what I think CX means today and some specific tips from our experience of how to build towards this improved customer experience. So why CX? In the online world and in the online market today, I believe that product and price alone cannot be the only differentiator anymore. So note that I highlighted just the word alone, because while product and price still play a role with differentiation, as you will see in the next slide, we are slowly moving towards something we like to call an experience economy. And we need to start creating a superior and integrated customer experience on top of the products and services that we already offer. Now, again, don't get me wrong, I do believe product is still king, but because good products will continue to be what customers will be looking for, those brands who are able to harness customer experience and augment their products with superior customer experience will be able to differentiate themselves further. Now, so this is one of my favorite ways of trying to understand and explain the experience economy that we're moving towards through a brand we all most likely would be familiar with now, so Starbucks. If you look at this diagram, the product is the same. It's coffee, right? So from beans as commodities, to packed coffee as goods, to gourmet coffee as services, to a Starbucks as an experience. So the more you move towards experience, the more differentiated you can become, and as a result, the higher the price you can also charge. So this same graph can virtually be applied to any industry in the world today, from food to tech to fashion or any product or service. So in a nutshell, why should we look at CX? It's really for further differentiation of our brands and our products. So now let's move on. So now that we hopefully know that why we should be looking at CX, what is CX basically? In my opinion, CX in itself is not new. The term may be new, but I think the principle is not. I think it's just the most modern version of existing principles like customer centricity or customer first, or even phrases like the customer is king or the customer is always right. So the concept of CX has been present in these principles ever since before. But the term CX now is just the most recent version, considering how tech terms now are also more casual, things like UX, design thinking, and so on. And honestly, I won't be surprised if CX will also evolve again in the future as another name. But I think that the principles and foundations that we'll talk about today are going to be roughly the same. I also believe that CX is primarily a perspective and a mindset first. It's not necessarily a technical skill or a qualification that you would list something that you have. There are some fields and backgrounds that help this, like marketing, business, and even psychology backgrounds. But all in all, I do believe that anyone can have a CX perspective and a mindset. So your ability to think of what the customer could want or need and how to tailor your brand to exceed their expectations for a better customer experience comes first and foremost from your perspective and mindset. So what I'll be sharing with you today builds on this and requires that you have a perspective and mindset of putting CX first. So just to try and put into words a definition of what I think actually CX is, I believe that CX is an experience with your brand, store, or company in any way, on any channel, at any time, for any reason. So what do I mean by these words in bold? So any way means it can be any type of experience. So from things like from seeing or hearing about your brand, visiting your online or your offline store, from making a purchase, using your products, and so on. Any channel means where they experience your brand. So do they see your brand on social media? Is it through your online or offline store? Do they see you on a billboard, hear about it from friends, from influencers, or from endorsers? This is where they experience your brand. At any time, so this is especially applicable to e-commerce since our online stores are open 24/7 basically. So customer experience applies even if your stores are closed. think that's a key thing I want to point out here, that while offices and our office hours may end, our customers never stop being our customers. And lastly, for any reason, so customer experience exists whether a customer reaches out to ask about your products because they might have a problem that your brand can help solve, or even negative reasons like a poor experience with your brand or products.